That human shouldn't even be alive, scoffed Gorak, squinting at the screen in disbelief. Around him, the carved delegation muttered in uneasy agreement. Every Deathworlder species had gathered on Z Prime, a neutral meeting ground for the few life forms tough enough to survive planets that actively sought to kill them. Brutal terrains, vicious predators, toxic atmospheres. These were familiar challenges to the Carve. They thought they understood resilience. They thought they'd seen the pinnacle of endurance, and then they encountered the humans. On the main screen of the conference room, a grainy video feed played. A human, lean, scarred, and alarmingly casual, was strolling across a scorching desert under twin suns. The sensor readings flashed along the side of the screen, searing temperatures, wind speeds lethal to most species. And yet, there he was, just walking. "I don't get it," growled Iroh, a scaled carved warrior with a scar running from his forehead down to his jawline. He was known for his steely resolve, but right now, he looked genuinely puzzled. "They aren't armored, don't have any venom, and lack claws. What do they have?" "Bones." The others nodded. Carve, proud descendants of survivalist evolution, had never encountered anything like the humans. Carve were tough, yes, built to withstand toxic environments and injuries that would easily incapacitate other species. They were muscular, dense, and armored in natural plating. In short, they were the galaxy's undisputed masters of harsh living. Or so they thought. One of the delegates, a scientist named Drake, piped up, clearly disturbed. "The data suggests they don't only survive on their home world, they thrive. Their planet, Earth, is like nothing we've ever studied." Gorak grunted, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Elaborate." "Earth," Drake said, visibly trying to suppress his disbelief, "has a highly unstable environment. Extreme cold and heat, unpredictable weather, active volcanic zones, vast chaotic seas. Nothing about it is hospitable, yet humans have adapted to almost every corner of it. They even go so far as to challenge it, intentionally, climbing its highest mountains, swimming in its deepest waters, or venturing to its poles for entertainment." The room went silent. Entertainment? That concept was not lost on the Carve, who relished proving their own strength. But to seek out danger on purpose? Ridiculous. "Iroh," muttered Iroh. "They're either insane or lying." "I thought so too," Drake admitted. "But there's more." He hesitated, as if reluctant to share the next piece of information. "Earth is a true death world by the strictest definition. Not like Carve. The predators there are dangerous, yes, but it's not an apex world. There are no toxins in the air, no catastrophic magnetic storms. Then why call it a death world?" Someone sneered. Drake took a deep breath, tapping on his tablet. "Because humans themselves are the threat. They're aggressive in ways we don't fully understand. They don't just survive, they dominate. They form packs, create weapons, and adapt faster than any species on record. They've encountered creatures that would kill most other Deathworlders, and they've figured out ways to subdue or even befriend them." A hologram popped up, projecting images of various Earth animals. Massive felines, creatures with crushing jaws, and towering mammoths. At the center of each image was a human, grinning and undaunted, standing next to these beasts as if they were allies. Gorak watched, his skepticism fading, replaced by reluctant intrigue. "You're saying they train these things?" "They don't just train them," Trick replied, his voice lowering. "They make them companions. They bond with them. And it's not just beasts. Their technology, while primitive compared to ours, is modified for any environment. And it's their tenacity. They don't stop, even when outmatched. Even when injured, humans just keep going. It's like survival itself is hardwired into their instincts." The Carve exchanged glances, each warrior grappling with the realization that perhaps they had underestimated these strange beings. For as long as any of them could remember, the Carve had considered themselves a standard by which survival was measured. They were not accustomed to feeling threatened, especially not by a species without natural defenses. Then the door to the chamber slid open, and the human ambassador walked in. He was nothing remarkable at first glance, about the height of a Carve juvenile, unarmored, with a sturdy frame that seemed laughably fragile next to the massive armored Carve figures in the room. But there was something unsettling in his gaze. His eyes scanned the room with a calm intensity, an unspoken confidence that unnerved the Carve more than any weapon could. "Gentlemen," he greeted, his voice steady. He had no translator. He spoke the Karv language fluently, a feat that took even seasoned diplomats years to master. I appreciate the warm welcome. Irok's lip curled as he eyed the human. You're lucky we allowed you here, human. We don't usually waste time with soft-skinned creatures from garden planets. The human ambassador simply smiled, unfazed. I'd imagine not. Then again, I'd wager most species don't survive long enough to have that conversation with you. That earned a few begrudging chuckles from the Karv side, though Eero's expression remained stony. Drake, always the scientist, couldn't resist pressing forward. Tell us, human, how is it that your kind has endured on such a world without armor, without claws or fangs? The ambassador shrugged as though the answer were obvious. We adapt. We think our way out of situations. Sometimes we fight. Sometimes we wait. We know that brute strength isn't everything. Eero's brow furrowed. Strength is survival. Strength is survival when there's no other option, the human replied. But on Earth, survival is just the beginning. We learn, we build, we form alliances, we take risks, because it's in our nature. That's why we're here, speaking with you. The Karv delegation exchanged wary glances. The human was bold, but he wasn't boasting. His tone was calm, steady, almost matter-of-fact. And yet Gorak interjected, breaking the silence. You're mortal, breakable. If what we hear is true, your people suffer loss, pain. How do you manage such fragility? The ambassador paused, looking genuinely contemplative, as though this question went beyond mere physical limitations. He seemed to be searching for a way to explain something deeper. We suffer. Yes, he finally said. But that suffering drives us. It's what makes us push forward to protect what we have. We fight because of it, and we build because of it. Our mortality reminds us that every second counts, that life is precious, and that's what gives us strength. Gorak's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The words made him uneasy. The Karv had long dismissed emotions as weaknesses, things that clouded survival instincts. But the human was saying the opposite, that fragility was a source of resilience. It was a notion that gnawed at the edges of Karv pride. Before anyone else could respond, a junior Karv warrior, who had been standing guard, stepped forward. Enough of this talk, he snarled, impatience evident in his voice. Let's see if this human is as tough as he claims. The room stilled. A challenge on Karv terms was no small matter. The human ambassador met the young warrior's stare without flinching. I didn't come here to prove anything, he said, but then a glint sparked in his eye. However, I'm not one to turn down a demonstration. Gorak raised a hand, signaling for silence. This was not part of the planned diplomatic exchange, and yet he couldn't deny the curiosity burning within him. The Karv warriors cleared a space in the center of the room, forming a loose circle around the human and the young challenger, whose name was Kag. Kag was infamous among the Karv ranks for his speed and strength. Even his elders watched him with a mix of pride and weariness. The idea of matching a human against him was almost laughable. The human ambassador shrugged off his jacket and stepped into the circle, wearing only a simple shirt and pants, clearly unimpressed by the hulking warrior sizing him up. All right, Kag, he said almost casually. How do you want to play this? Kag growled, cracking his knuckles with a sickening sound that resonated through the room. Survive, he sneered, as if that alone would be impossible. He crouched, muscles rippling under his armor plating, his sharp gaze fixed on the human, ready to strike. The Karv watched in silence, some in anticipation, others with pity for the human who seemed oblivious to the challenge he was facing. This wasn't just a test. It was almost a ritual among the Karv, a way to assert dominance and put other species in their place. But the human didn't flinch. Kag lunged, a blur of armored muscle and raw power. He swung a fist the size of a boulder, aiming directly for the human's chest, fully expecting to send him flying across the room. But the human sidestepped smoothly, moving with an agility that caught Kag off guard. Kag whirled around, eyes narrowing, and charged again, this time faster, a blur of limbs and brute force. The human dodged each swing, every movement measured and precise. Kag's attacks were relentless, but the human slipped out of each one, his expression calm, almost amused. The Karv murmured in disbelief. Was the human toying with Kag? Finally, the human moved, and it was almost too fast to follow. He ducked under Kag's swing, stepped into his space, and swept his legs out from under him. Kag landed hard, the impact echoing through the chamber. Before he could recover, the human was standing over him, one foot planted firmly on Kag's chest, holding him down without effort. "Strength isn't everything, Dahuma," and said quietly, stepping back to allow Kag to stand. "Survival isn't just about who hits harder. It's about who adapts faster." The carved delegation sat in stunned silence. For the first time in generations, they felt something they couldn't name, a mixture of awe and unease. Perhaps the humans were right. Perhaps resilience wasn't just about raw power. Perhaps, they realized with a shiver, the humans might just be the ultimate survivors after all.